Presidents, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to address this dinner of the German Marshal Fund. Over the last few days, the last few hours, I've been quite involved in the European Union talks about a fund, Greek fund. So it is a welcome change to speak at a fund. I should like to take this opportunity to say a few words about transatlantic relations. The German Marshall Fund is a testimony to the long and profound history of the relationship between America and Europe. General Marshall announcing his plan in 1947. Ladies and gentlemen, my year of birth, although you wouldn't think it. Chancellor Willy Brandt thanking the American people with the establishment of this fund in 1972. However, the political question for us today is how to translate this shared history and our shared values into a shared future. In order to do so, it is not enough to simply multiply expressions like transatlantic dialogue or strategic partnership. Nor is it enough to explain how incredibly interconnected our economies are. The flows of transatlantic trade, investment and people are certainly impressive, but shared interests are not in themselves a guarantee for converging policies. It is not even enough to list the essential values we share on both sides of the Atlantic: democracy, freedom, dignity of the human person. To respect these is not the same thing as to act upon them together. Our values, our interests, our multiple dialogues create an extraordinary basis for a strong transatlantic partnership. In order to forge a common destiny, what one needs above all, this is a common story. A story about one's place in the flow of time. We have to, as they say, read from the same script. During the Cold War, Europe and America did share the same narrative, defending the free world against Soviet communism. This compelling story shaped fully our sense of political reality. It tied our destinies together. 2 decades after the end of the Cold War, we cannot be so sure anymore that the basic political experiences of Europeans and Americans are the same. I suppose this lack of narrative is what is fundamentally behind some of the transatlantic ripples and other misunderstandings one finds in the press these days. Working closely together begins with accepting that the counterpart may have different interests from yourself. 20 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, this still comes as a surprise to some people. Both Europe and America are entitled to ask the other, what do you bring to the table? In transatlantic relations, this question is often avoided through guilt of arrogance or I don't know what. However, stating clearly what we need from the other and why would make our relationship more mature. It is the only sound basis for cooperation. The only easy relationship is an empty relationship. Anyway, here we are, Europe and America in a rapidly changing G20 world, both searching a new role and a new place. A transatlantic area of 800 million people, the richest consumers, the best educated workforce and the freest citizens in the world. What will our common political story be? I think the European Union and the United States should together find the responses to the old and new forms of global insecurity and invite others to join us. That is how I see our common story. Threats of a new kind undermine the security of our free societies and the networks these societies are built on. Terrorism, market disruptions, energy shortages, climate change, cyber attacks. No single country can impose its will or its rules on a world adrift. To share the burden and to lead the way, why not start with two? Europe and America are destined to be those two. I'm not primarily thinking of military or nuclear insecurity, although even in the military security, Europe is an indispensable partner of the United States of America. Let me just say that 30,000 European soldiers in Afghanistan, hundreds of Belgians, Minister, my friend, the Minister of Defense, is not a small feat, especially taking into account the reservations of European public opinion. And for all the talk of new global partners, I do not see anytime soon comparable numbers of troops from these new global partners patrolling in Kandahar, in Kabul, or in Kunduz. We are very much in favor of President Obama's initiative to prevent nuclear terrorism and control nuclear proliferation. As President of the European Council, I will promote that position at the nuclear summit in Washington next month. Market volatility itself can be a security risk, especially when it is not just banks and business, but states that are getting in financial trouble. I understand the American interest in how the European Union deals with Greece. We did it in the last days. You do not want a second Lehman Brothers, and rightly so.